Hey y'all, check it out. Here I am in the basement of the heart of Deep East Texas, and today is my worm bin day. Yes, I threatened earlier that every YouTube gardener eventually gets around to making a video on worm bins, how they keep worms. And there's all different kinds. There's ones that actually are information laden and can really help you get started. And then there's others that will inspire you to get out there and get after it. And then there's my video, which just basically shows you how I do it. Simple, easy. It's the Simple Tim method. A lot of people don't like touching worms. They think it's gross, they think it's nasty, and they think worm keeping, you're going to have to run your worms through that big tumbler hurricane where the worms get thrown all about. Or worse yet, you'll have to separate the castings from the worms and make big piles and finger up all the worms. Well, you don't have to touch the worms at all. I mean, if you're doing it right, you probably won't even see them unless you go fishing around looking for them. This is how I do it, and it works out pretty well for me. I'm not a wormologist, I'm not a worm ecologist, I'm just a cat who's been keeping some worms. This is how I do it. I start off with some Rubbermaid bins. You get three to start with. And your first bin is a tray. You don't cut any holes in it, you just leave it a solid tray, and that'll catch any worm drippings that might come through. There won't be a lot, I mean, unless you're adding way too much wet food scraps. Then you get a bin, which is where the worms are going to live. Now in this bin, you cut lots of air holes in the lid and around the side and in the bottom there. I don't know if you can see all the holes in it. There's a good bunch of holes. And I don't know what is 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, I'll figure it out. You're not going to make too big of a hole. It's not like the worms are going to fall through. They're really not trying to escape. If it's light and hot and dry outside, they don't want to come out. They want to stay in there when you keep it the right dampness and they have food and it's dark. They're not going to try to escape unless it is funky. Okay? And what you do is you get your tray and you fill it up with, I use shredded cardboard. I guess you can use, not shredded cardboard, shredded newspaper. You can use a lot of different carbon-y sort of things, leaves or shredded cardboard or tissue paper, I don't know. But newspaper's easy and works the best that I found. What you do is you get it in here, you get it damp, you wring it out. It's not like a wet rag that you can squeeze anything out, but it's still pretty damp. And then you put in some coffee grounds, maybe a little bit of potting soil, and then some, just a little bit of chopped up greens or banana peel or something like that. And then you just set it in here and you put your lid back on it and you let it get going, percolating. And in a day, maybe a week, your worms will arrive. Now, if you've got a friend who's already vermicomposting, shouldn't be any problem to hit them up for a cup full of worms. And but if you don't, easy to get them online. I originally got mine from, I think his name was Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy's Worms. I don't know if they still exist. This was 5 or 6 years ago that I first got my worms. And what you do, the worms arrive in a big pouch. You get them out there in some cocoa coir or some peat moss or something like that. You just get them a little damp if they're dried out. Mine came alive, just wiggling and giggling there, ready to go. I pulled the newspaper back a little bit and I dumped them off in there, and then I covered them back up with the newspaper and I left them alone. I mean, I wasn't going to name them or become friends with them or anything like that. You know, I just, in case something happened, you know, I would feel bad if I learned to love them. But you do learn to love them. Eventually you will name them, and no. Anyway, what will happen is they will live happily in this bedding as long as you give them a little bit of food, a little, and you keep adding a little more bedding in there, and you keep it the right moisture level. If it dries out, just spritz a little bit, or a little more damp food. If it gets too damp, it'll get mucky, and it might even start to smell. Just get some shredded dry newspaper, put it off in there, mix it up a little bit. It'll equal out. It'll straighten itself out. And you might get some fruit flies. Now, you've put too much food scraps in there to the amount of paper. You want to be able to cover up those food scraps with a good bunch of that bedding. And if they start getting flies in there, just put some more bedding on top. It should straighten it out. It won't hurt the worms. They don't mind. Sometimes you'll get other creatures living off in there, and they get along. There's no big fighting. I don't know if there are any worm predators that are going to get in your bin. Maybe if you keep them outside, a bird might fly in, boost the lid off, and start pecking your worm. So you watch out. Maybe put a scarecrow up over your worm bin, or little latches, keep them birds out. That shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so after they have pretty much consumed all of the bedding and the food that you put in there, and the level of their poop is slowly rising up, it becomes solid at the bottom. It gets heavy, it's thick, with their crumbly brown, coffee ground looking poop. And it smells like dirt, smells like earth. And what you do is, when they're just about done with all the goodies left in this bin here, you prepare another bin the same way. You fill it with shredded newspaper and some good coffee grounds and banana peels and potatoes, and there's all kinds of stuff you can put in there. Just about anything you'd eat. I wouldn't put meat or bones or eggshells or avocado skins. They don't break them down, they don't eat them. There's a few things they won't mess with a peach pit or anything like that, or an avocado seed, but you just fish them out of there. If they get in there, it's no big deal. You'll find some little rubber bands or twist tie or a little sticker from the side of the fruit. They won't eat those, but it's no problem. And so you get that bin ready, and you just set it right in on top of the worms already there that are in action. And what's going to happen is, as every last good bit of yum gets eaten down here, they will migrate through the holes up into this next bin. They just move on up like the Jeffersons. They pretty much turn all this into the compost. There might be a few eggs in there, a few little worms in there. What you do is you come along every once in a while, you pick it up, you look in there, and there's still a few little wiggling worms in there. They haven't all moved up, and you encourage them, come on guys, move on up. And then you put that back down in there, and you put in something they really like a watermelon rind or a cantaloupe rind, something like that. And eventually these guys all move up, and then they're all living in here. And then this becomes real heavy. You take this, and then you get this thing that's all full of their poop, and you swap places. Now, this becomes their main bin, and this is where they're going to be doing all their action, and you're going to keep on feeding them in here, and eventually the pile of poo will build, and it'll be time to do the tray again. You're going to end up with a big bin like this. Can you see that? That is all worm poop. 100% worm poop. And something sprouting in there. I think it's a squash seed or a zucchini seed. I don't know. But that's it. That's how you harvest the worm, because there's nothing to it. You don't have to separate the worms out or sift it through a big shaker. That's ready to go. You scoop it out, put it in a bucket, hose it down, pour it on your garden, or add it to your potting soil when you pot up your plants. You can even use it as seed starting material. It's great just to put in your garden or in your raised beds. You don't have to do anything except just crumble it on down around there. Some people, I have one, we'll get a bubbler, like from an aquarium, a 5-gallon bucket, and fill it with water, bubble it all up, add a little molasses, and then a bunch of worm castings, and make a tea. And there's something too about bubbling it, maybe makes the bacteria and the good things that are living off in there multiply. I have mixed feelings about that. I think it might just be oxidating them. But some people swear by it, and some people say you don't need to do that. Just mix it up so you can spread it around. And that's what I do, unless I get a wild hair and I want to look all cool for somebody and have the bubbler going. But I really encourage you to give worms a try. You can get some worms through the mail overnight or in a couple days. I think you could get enough to start with for 20 bucks. You know, get a good bunch for 50. You know, but you can do a lot with 20 bucks worth of worms. They multiply. You take good care of them. You can start another bin from one bin and split them off and do more. I have 3 sets of 3 bins, these blue here, and then I have one set of this silver, it's a little smaller. I think if I had to do it all over again, I'd get the smaller ones. They're easier to lift and move around. I don't usually keep these things here on this table. I keep them down, on the ground. So when they get real heavy, lifting them up, you could bust one of these handles, So don't get them this big or any bigger unless you're just gonna let it sit there. You know what I mean? Right now, over here, this great big bin, this is the Love Shack. I took the top layer out of the bins that I was cleaning up to show you the way I set them up, and I piled them all in there together. So it's kind of like the Jamaica vacation of worms right now. They're all over there getting their groove on, and hopefully when I go to divvy them back out amongst all of the bins, they'll be ready to procreate and get to business chewing up my banana peels. So I highly encourage you to give it a try, especially if you have kids. It's really fun. They squeal, they like it, and teaches them a whole lot about like soil biology and what's all going on in there, how the worms break down stuff and decompose stuff so your plants can absorb it better, and the worms and the microorganisms that live in the worm's guts and around the worms help the microorganisms that are already in the soil, and the mucus from the worms keeps the soil hydrated and broken up. There's so many neat things that, worm info. So I highly encourage you to get some worms, watch a few more worm videos that actually tell you how to do it and actually make a little bit of sense. But I was glad to tell you all about my worms today. If you like this video and you want to see more worms, maybe me making some worm tea or administering my worms, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And if you have a worm bin, take a picture of it, send it to me on my Facebook page. It's Simple Tim. Or post a video. I'm always encouraging everybody to make these videos. You're never gonna get famous on worm bins, okay? So it's just for fun. We just do it for fun. So hey, thanks a lot. I'll see you next time in the garden.